Actually, it's a great honor to be here. I'm so excited about this Congress. It's an honor to be talking to my peers. This is the first time many of us have met, and what a thrill this is. I really think this is going to change our industry forever. And I just want to pay a debt of gratitude to Cornelius and Kai and Rainer for what they've done in organizing this. It's been fantastic. And appropriate, John's just come in and sat in front of me, you know, kind of the grandfather of this industry in Germany. A debt of gratitude to you as well, John. I'm going to broaden the conversation out a little bit. We've talked about music mostly until now. And this talk is very much about a slightly broader palette, sound. And in fact, I want to go right back to the beginning, at the beginning of this talk. This is the sound of the cosmic microwave background. It's the sound of the first 380,000 years of the universe. That sound has been obviously pitch shifted by about 50 octaves in order for us to be able to hear it. But it is a genuine sound. There's other sounds mixed in here. That's a pulsar going on there. In the first 380,000 years of the universe, there was only a superheated plasma. There was no vision to speak of, but there was a lot of sound. And these echoes that we can still detect are the sound of that very early phase of the universe. So sound came before light, which is an interesting thing for us all to recognize. We're in an important industry, and actually I'm going to put a case here for sound actually being a predominant sense. It's interesting if you map this across to all of the spiritual traditions, or very many of the spiritual traditions and religious traditions of the world, they have sound first. In the beginning was the word, or there are many traditions, the Egyptian tradition, the Sufis, the mystics of Islam, they all talk about the world being spoken or sung or in some way sounded into existence. And it turns out, according to modern physics, they were right. Let's move on and just consider the issue of vibration, because all sound is vibration, and everything, if you look at physics, everything in the universe is vibrating. You're vibrating as you sit there right now. Every atom and molecule in your body is vibration. In fact, that's all we are. And that's all the whole universe is. Now, these shapes here are very beautiful artifacts. They come from a new subject called Cymatics, which is the study of what sound looks like. It started by passing sound through plates with sand on top. Many of you will have seen demonstrations of that, and when you pass a sound through a plate like that, it forms a pattern. And these cymatic patterns represent different tones. That's the vowel A in sound. These other ones represent more complex sounds, and interestingly start to represent shapes that we see very often in nature, archetypal shapes, snowflake or flower. So sound, shape, there's something very, very substantial and real here, and it's rather wonderful, I think. Of course, as it's human beings, the beginning of sound goes back to here. And the first sense you develop is sound. Just after 12 weeks from conception, you're already hearing. We don't just hear with our ears, we hear with our entire body. Your muscle, your skin, your bone, your skull, you're hearing with all of it, which is how a great percussionist like Dame Evelyn Glennie can play music and talk to people even though her ears don't work at all. She's hearing through the rest of her body. That sound of a heartbeat, incidentally, and I'll just drop this one in for those of you who are musicians, if you think about it, is in 3-time. Lub, dub, pause, lub, dub, pause, lub, dub, pause, which I think is very interesting. 3-time is a very generally reassuring, happy kind of a time signature, whereas 2-time or 4-time, which are from the feet, are much more directed, marching. There's a different vibe to those 2-time signatures, and I think 3-4 has got a lot to do with our first few months in the womb when we're listening to it and being very comfortable. Hearing is hardwired into your lizard brain. It's an amazing sense. I'll just give you a couple of ideas of how amazing hearing is. Your eyes see only 1 octave. Your ears hear up to 10. I mean, when you're very young and you've got fantastic hearing, it's 10 octaves. Most of us, 7, 6. But nevertheless, it's a lot more than the eyes, which see only 1 octave. We hear a range of intensity from the very quietest sound to the very loudest sound you could bear it's 10,000 times greater than the range you can see from the faintest light to the most piercing light that you could bear. You can distinguish, or a good human being can distinguish just under 1,400 just noticeable differences in tone. So that's an incredible appreciation of just noticeable differences compared to most people can distinguish about 150 hues of colour. So we're much more discerning in our hearing as well. And also, your hearing can detect not just relative differences, but absolute ones. I mean, everybody can detect an octave. There's no such parallel in sight. You wouldn't know if two colours are octave apart, or a third apart, or a fifth apart, but you can hear those things with your ears. Also, your ears are always on. We have no earlids. Your ears are working when you're asleep. They're guarding you 24 hours a day. It's a 360-degree process, whereas my eyes are seeing a cone. It's about 120 degrees by 180 degrees, and I direct where it goes. My ears are detecting 360 degrees sphere around me, and I can place an object anywhere in that sphere with my ears. And yet, in our culture, the eyes have it. Now, why is this? We've lost the ability to listen. Hearing is a wonderful sense, but you have to use it. And when you use it, that's what listening is about. I love this quote from Ernest Hemingway. I like to listen. I've learned a great deal from listening carefully. Most people never listen. And it's so true today. I want to just give you a little exercise to loosen you up for this talk. There are lots of different listening positions. Now, that may not be a concept you've come across. Surely we just listen. I mean, either I'm listening or I'm not listening. Well, in fact, you can listen from different places. And I'll give you just one of those. This is a difference in position from reductive listening to expansive listening. And if I just describe those two positions, well, actually, no, I'll have you do the exercise first. So the exercise is going to be, you'll turn to the person next to you. One of you will be A. Let's say the person on this side will be A, the person on that side will be B. And A, I'd like you to tell B what you had for breakfast. Okay? It's not difficult, you can do that. B, we're going to do this twice. B, the first time you do this, you're going to be in this position, and I would like to listen, I would like you to be listening for how can I make money out of this? Typically, you'll be concentrating to get that piece of information out, so you may not have eye contact. That's a very typical reductive listening posture. It's a much more male form of listening. So let's go, we'll do 15 seconds on this because I'm quite tight for time. So when I say go, A's, tell B what you have for breakfast. B's, how can I make money out of this? And go. Okay, and stop. And now let's try that. Let's try that again. By the way, the women amongst you may be struggling with this one because it's not natural for women to listen in that fashion. We're now going to move to a much more female or feminine listening position, which is expansive. Do you notice the difference in body language here? Side by side, gazing off into the distance, bodies facing, eye contact, quite possibly both talking at the same time. Gentlemen, we can't do that. Ladies, you know what I'm talking about. Expansive listening is listening just for the joy of it. Just for smelling the breeze and feeling the daisies, and there's nowhere to go, nothing to do, but just really enjoying listening and connecting with that person. Same exercise. A's, tell B what you had for breakfast. B's, this time, you're expansive. And go. Okay, and stop. Can I have one A share their experience of those two forms of listening? Anybody want to share their experience of the difference between those two forms of listening?
Well, first was very short.
Yeah.
I had muesli, and the second one I had muesli with this and this.
So you felt drawn out?
I
So that's a very quick exercise, but the answer here was the first one was very short and directed, the second one was drawn out, and you know, there was much more information being asked and given. There are many forms of listening. I'll take questions at the end if I may. There are many positions to listen from. I give you this to play with. Listening is a fantastic skill to learn, and there are many positions we can listen from, and many levels of intensity of listening. We're people who listen anyway a lot. So I know I'm preaching to the converted here, but it's fun to experiment with these. The reason that the eyes have it is because most people have forgotten how to, well, they never knew how to do this, and they've forgotten how to listen most of the time. And that's because most of the sound around us is accidental and much of it is unpleasant. We stand on street corners bellowing over noise like this and pretending it doesn't exist. And if I could smell this, or if I could see it, I wouldn't put up with it. But because it's sound, we all just pretend it's not there at all. This is just normal. This is noise that we put aside, and we have got so used to suppressing sound, as a result of this, it's become a reflex. So sound gets suppressed, we forget how to listen, we become unconscious in our listening, and that's where most people are right now. And yet sound does affect us. So here I'm just going to go into the territory I covered on that TED Talk. For those of you who've seen it, you're going to see it again. For those of you who haven't, here it comes. Sound affects you in 4 ways, and I'm just going to rush through those. The first is physiological. For the guys right next to the speakers, I do apologise for that one. And for those of you at the back who didn't get the full benefit, I can assure you 1 or 2 people in this room just had a shot of cortisol, which is your fight-flight hormone, and the cortisol is injected into your bloodstream when you have a shock. And that is happening to people all the time. That's a physiological effect of sound. Sound affects your breathing, your heart rate, your brain waves, and all your hormone secretions. It can do that in a nice way as well. This is a bit of surf, which many people find relaxing. It's got a frequency of roughly 12 cycles per minute, which is about the same as a sleeping human being. So there's a resonance there with being asleep. We also associate it. Remember what Adrian was saying this morning. Surf, holiday, relaxation, beach, nice, relaxed. So there's an association that goes on. So that's physiological. The second way sound affects people is psychological. This is not going to make you feel happy. Well, unless you're very strange. I have only met one person who said this piece of music made them feel happy. This piece of music is designed to make you feel sad, and it generally does do that. It's one of the best at doing that. That's not the only kind of sound that changes your emotions. Birdsong will do that as well. Birdsong, over hundreds of thousands of years, is a sound that we've learned to associate with security. When the birds are singing, things are okay. It's when they stop, you need to worry. So most people at an unconscious and non-conscious level find birdsong reassuring. It also stimulates us because it's the sound of being awake. You don't get the birds when you're asleep. When the birds stop singing, it's time to get up. So those 2 non-conscious effects change our psychological state. The third way sound affects us is cognitively. If you're listening to this, you can't understand 2 people talking at once. Try listening, or in this case, 1 person talking twice. You can understand about 1.6 people talking at the same time. You have a very small bandwidth for audio input, and that bandwidth is easily taken up. So if you're working in an office and sound like this going on, it's very difficult to concentrate, and especially if it's other people's concentration, they're taking up that small area and reducing your effectiveness by a massive 2/3. That's a pretty terrifying number. It's from a study by Bamber and Berry in 1998. And I seem to be the only person who's really spotted that big number. It's buried in there. Not many people have understood that that is so serious. But that's what they found. Office noise degrades knowledge workers' productivity by 2/3. Obviously, if you're on a production line or signing checks, as Adrian was talking about this morning, music's good. If you're a footballer, an empty stadium's no good. A big stadium with lots of noise is great. So it's all about appropriateness. But if you're trying to use your brain to manipulate symbols, then noise is very, very damaging. You can get over that just with a pair of headphones and some birdsong or surf or some ambient music or something to take all of that sound away. Okay, and the final way in which sound affects people is behaviorally. With all that stuff going on, it'd be amazing if it wouldn't. So ask yourself, is this person going to drive at a steady 30 kilometers an hour? I don't think so. We've all had the feeling of pumping music in a car. It makes us give the car some oomph and we take off. Our behavior is changed all the time by sound. So another example is this. If I were to play this for more than a few seconds, you'd start getting pretty uncomfortable. And if I left it on for the rest of my talk, you'd all be gone. Because we move away from unpleasant sound, we move towards pleasant sound. And there's a great deal of unpleasant sound out there. In fact, retailers, unfortunately, don't understand that unpleasant sound is reducing their sales by up to 28%. That's feeding off that Milliman study that Adrian talked about earlier. But if you imagine the soundscape in your local supermarket, we're not talking about fast music versus slow music. We're talking about a vile soundscape. I'll play you some examples later on of squeaks, crashes, buzzes, hums, cries, beeps. It's not going to make you want to hang out in that space. This is the model we use at the Sound Agency of the way sound affects human beings. You can start at the top with the drivers of sound, and you can analyze sound in terms of its tempo, pitch, harmony, texture, density, dynamics, all of the different elements of sound. You can go through. You can then go through the filters and say, well, these are the outcomes your sound is having, Mr. Client. That's what we do a great deal of, is auditing. Or you can go the other way and you say, if you want to have these outcomes, then that's the kind of sound you need. And I would just point to the bit in the middle, because that's what makes it different in each case. Because in each case we have different functions. What are people trying to do in the space or wherever it is? What's the environment like? What are the acoustics like? Is there intrusive noise, like boat horns coming in through the windows? What's the sound system like? So what's it appropriate to put into that space, if anything? And most of all, who are the people in the space? And what is the brand or the values behind the space? That means no two shops should ever be the same. It's my firm belief that you should be able to close your eyes in any commercial space and have an idea of which brand is behind that space. At the moment, close your eyes in a shop, you have no idea where you are. They all sound the same, mostly, anyway. Just a quick word on music. There's another great quote, I love this one, from Hermann Hesse. He wrote, "Music is time made aesthetically perceptible." You think about that for a moment. Because music is the only art form that exists only in time. Music does not exist at an instant. It exists through time. So it makes time perceptible aesthetically. Music is a very, very powerful form of sound. If you believe the anthropologist Stephen Mython, we sang before we talked. Quite possibly true. Music is in every human society on the planet. So to be human is to be musical. To be musical is to be human, to a degree. It may affect cows, but they don't make much music, as far as I know, so far. We do. And it combines all of the drivers I was just talking about. So it's an immensely powerful sound for two reasons further. First, it's very fast to recognize for human beings. And secondly, we associate it. This is what Adrian was talking about earlier. With the knowledge, I can't remember what he called it now, I wrote it down, but the psychological association process that he talked about earlier. I'll give you two examples. Anybody over about 35, thank you. I mean, that's 1 second, and here's another 1 second. Now, you're not thinking of violins, are you? You're thinking of danger, shark, horror, and that's 1 second of music. It's very, very powerful. So it needs to be deployed with great care. And unfortunately, that's not always the case with the music piping industry. Okay, let's come on to BrandSound. Because this is what we're here to talk about. That's a little bit of wider discussion. Every brand is out there making sound. And if you have clients who say, why should we do this? Why should we be making sound? The answer is, you are. You just don't know what it is yet, and it's probably damaging you. They don't realize that. And it's a very important thing for the clients to understand. They are making sound in every aspect of their business right now. It's just accidental, uncontrolled. The opportunity for us to use sound is particularly important because the marketing landscape is changing dramatically. This is a pretty amazing number. 400% increase in the daily advertising messages that the average American is receiving, up to 3,000 in a day. In fact, the average American, that's branded messages, so it could be the logo on your cornflakes. Or a car that drives past. But the average American is also seeing something like 86,000 commercials in a year. Now that is an incredible amount of noise in the system. And if you assume that there's a limited amount of attention we all have, then all of those ads and commercial messages are getting less and less and less attention each. And it's costing more to reach people because of media fragmentation. It's a really serious problem. It's a huge amount of noise in the system, and it's starting to increase. I mean, we're seeing screens everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. That was Sao Paulo Airport, actually. I apologize for using a Brazilian example to my Brazilian friend there, but in the customs area of Sao Paulo Airport, is this a welcome to Brazil, here's some lovely samba music or, you know, whatever? No, this is Yo MTV Raps. How appropriate is that? Everywhere, and I really do mean everywhere, we're getting bombarded with messaging. And there's a reaction that people are having to this, more and more. Here it is. The research shows that most people are using these things not so much to listen to music as to get away from the rest of the sound that's out there and to reclaim control over their personal space. So unless we want everybody to be walking around every shop wearing an iPod, unreachable by any of us, we've got to start to take some stands here and to influence the way that particularly the digital out-of-home, digital signage industry is starting to turn speakers on these television screens. And we are looking at a nightmare world where you can't go anywhere without being bombarded with audiovisual messaging that you don't want. As a result of all of this noise, broadcast media is looking a bit like a joke now. In the old days, you could put one TV commercial on a network and you'd reach the bulk of the population at peak time. That is no longer true. The cost is going up. The attention levels and recall are going down. There's more of it. It's more expensive. It reaches less people. The whole marketing paradigm has shifted. And we're moving, and anybody in marketing understands this. They are very scared of it. And the advertising agencies in particular are very, very scared of this. Because in the future, it doesn't look as though the answer is always advertising. Now, you go to an advertising agency, the answer is advertising. Whatever the question you ask, the answer is advertising. Not in this world. We move from the old model of intrusion and resistance to a new model of permission and engagement. It's a conversation. And that means we've got to be delivering value in order to receive attention. Different world. The other fact that's quite interesting, and this is from Martin Lindstrom's book, is the imbalance between the spend on the different senses, where you can see 84.2%, he reckoned, of Fortune 500 companies' spend goes on sight, whereas people say that the senses are much more even to them in importance in terms of the information they're receiving. So if you look, there's a big imbalance in sound. It's about 3.5 to 1, something like that. That's a huge opportunity for all of us in the audio branding industry and for the brands to make some really serious inroads and improve their communication. I always say that sight and sound are the two major senses. I know the imbalances are greater for things like touch and taste and smell, but you can't broadcast smell and you can't say specific things with it. Sight and sound both have that capability. You can reach millions of people and you can say specific things. So when you restrict it to the two major senses, you see where the opportunity for all of us lies. And the final word I'd like to say about branding generally is that there's a whole, I wish I could have come and understood the neuromarketing talk that those of you who speak German just had, but there's a whole conversation starting about the power of non-conscious or emotional marketing. And I would suggest, these aren't research numbers, they're guesses. I would suggest that sight is largely conscious, because I move these around, I'm looking where I intend to look. Whereas sound, a lot of sound at the moment is non-conscious, and it's having an effect on people, and it's all at an accidental, unplanned level, both in the sending of it and in the receiving of it. That's our opportunity. This is the model that we use to understand the opportunity for brands to use sound. We call it BrandSound, and we've defined 8 expressions of a brand in sound. This isn't the only game in town. Plenty of other people have got other distinctions, but this is just the one that we use, and I'll share it with you. I want to give you some examples of each of them, because it's a wider conversation than perhaps many people think. Let's start with brand voice. Many brands have a strong voice, many don't. The first time I got on a Virgin Atlantic aeroplane, the stewardess said, "Hello, sexy." Well, if she'd been working for British Airways, she would have been sacked for saying that. But for Virgin, that was absolutely right. I sincerely hope she wasn't trained to say it and that she meant it. I fondly believe she did, but it was so right. That is the Virgin brand. It's cheeky, irreverent, you know, a little bit surprising and rather delightful in those ways. He's a strong voice of that brand. And when you get into brand voice, it covers everything. My friends from Nokia are here today. They've had a struggle with the word Nokia. You say it Nokia. In America, people say Nokia. Now, you can't control a whole population, but you can at least have your own people saying your own brand name the right way. And these things are important. And then you can ask questions like, is our brand male or masculine or feminine? Is it old or young? Is it lively and bubbly, or is it laid back and professional? Is there a vocabulary it uses and a vocabulary it doesn't use? Every brand should be distinguishing these things in order to have a consistent experience in every touch point, whether it's a receptionist saying hello, or a telephone salesperson, or a customer support person, or a recorded announcement. Some of the most prestigious brands in the world. Is there anybody here from American Express? Okay, I can be rude about them. That's a highly prestigious brand. Their telephone, in the UK anyway, their telephone recorded announcements are terrible. Recorded by members of staff, almost inaudible, variable volume levels, amateurish, and just let the brand down badly. Once you get through to a person, they're very good. So brand voice, very important. Second, brand music. This is music that's either composed for the brand or commissioned, licensed by it. So it could be commercial music. And I'm going to give you a little cautionary tale. Recognize this? Most people would. If you've ever flown British Airways, this is very associated with them. The flower duet from Lakme by Delhi. They've used it for years and years and years. And then they sacked M&C Saatchi and they employed BBH in America, who thought, let's get rid of that old classical nonsense and replace it with something a bit more contemporary. So they used this.
We believe your holiday should start before you arrive.
I'm leaving on a jet plane, don't know when I'll be back again.
You should expect to check in online.
Not the best message, perhaps, to be giving to airline travellers. Written by a guy called John Denver, who, died in a plane crash, incidentally. There was a big rebellion from British Airways customers when that happened. Where's our lovely music gone? So this was not a good move in every way. And at the same time, Silverjet, Arrival, launched in the UK. They employed M&C Saatchi, who employed the old director, who shot an identical-looking commercial on the salt flats in Utah and used the Delhi. The only thing that was different was the logo. And in 90 seconds, Silverjet appropriated all of BA's brand values just by using that music. We're British, reliable, we've been around for ages. It was amazing. BA still have not trademarked that music, and they should, because they could. Sonic logo is the next of the 8 expressions, and I'm going to pay homage to Walter, who's, I'm honoured to be speaking before Walter, by playing you, of course, We All Know That, and here's the guy who wrote it. So good to have you with us, Walter. That's the most famous one in the world, but I would like just to use probably the most played one in the world as an example, and that's Nokia. You may not recognize this. But you will recognize it in a second. Turned into, which is the world's most played tune. I've calculated this is played 1.8 billion times a day using the numbers of Nokia handsets and the proportion of people who don't change their ringtone. That's 20,000 times every second. It's the world's most played tune. Happy Birthday is way behind. So what did that cost Nokia? nothing. There's a story attached to the way that got derived, and it was a happy accident, really. But the effect has been enormous on their brand recognition. It's a two-edged sword, and the guys at Nokia very well know they have to keep that sound fresh, migrating, changing, so it doesn't become boring or associated with, not being clever enough to change your ringtone. So you have to manage these sounds very carefully. However, as long as it sounds pleasing, pleasant, it's inspirational, it's fresh, and there's a new version with every handset, then it goes on, doing its powerful work. Let's move on to advertising sound. This is an area which is difficult because advertising agencies like to own this very much. And to be fair to advertising agencies, they do a fantastic job. The film industry uses sound better than any industry on this planet. Advertising has learned every lesson in the book from the film industry, and they're generally pretty good. What they are not is always very strategic or consistent. So it usually, and you talk to any composer, I was just having this conversation with Walter, it'll often be the creative director's favourite track at the moment, or there'll be a rough cut with a piece of Sting on it, and they play it so many times that eventually they have to go to Sting and they pay him £500,000 to use the track. Or somebody forgets to do the music until 48 hours before the commercial is due to air, and some poor composer gets the job. These kinds of things happen all the time. However, there are some great triumphs. Here's one.
They're great!
60 years old, that is, one of the oldest Sonic logos, jingles on the planet. And I just want to share with you this one because I deeply love it. Now, I talked to you earlier about listening. Have a good listen to this.
He waits. That's what he does. And I tell you what, tick followed tock, followed tick, followed tock, followed tick. Ahab says, I don't care who you are, here's to your dream. The old sailors return to the bar. Here's to you, Ahab! And the fat drummer hit the beat with all his heart. Here's to waiting.
That's just inspired. Hands up, how many people heard him put the glass down on the bar? 2. Interesting. You've got to practice your listening, guys. So in the middle of that, he went, clunk. The glass went down on the bar. There's a lot of sound design in that. It's beautifully done. And it's a great example of magnificent advertising sound. Inspired choice of a piece of left field. And probably it was the creative director's favourite track at the time. I don't care, it's brilliant. So advertising sound, really our involvement with it tends to be just to try and make it more strategic. So it's not ad by ad, or even campaign by campaign, but it's branded. Let's talk about a very exciting new sector, which is branded audio. I think this is a huge opportunity for all of us. It used to be this stuff. I mean, that's, for those of you who can't see, Hotel Cost, Buddha Bar, Café Del Mar. All of these guys make more money out of CDs than they do out of being a hotel or a bar. They've sold millions and millions and millions of copies of those CDs. That's the way branded audio used to be. Now it looks like this. And to give you an idea of what it can do and how appropriate it can be, here's a little example from Nike.
This is Alberto Salazar, your Nike running coach. This 30-minute workout includes hill repeats to improve your running fitness and leg strength, so it will feel
So you get Alberto Salazar talking you through a whole workout on your iPod as you do it, and there's a whole series of these. It's perfect for the brand. It's absolutely brilliant, added value content that Nike are giving to their customers in audio with their Nike brand on top of it. Branded audio, particularly podcasting, I think is a huge opportunity for all of us, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger as brands start to look at new ways of giving extra value to their customers. Let's move on to one that's not so good, telephone sound. This is almost a virgin area. I mean, we've all had the experience of slamming the phone down in frustration after press 1 for this, press 3 for that, press 5 for this, and none of the options are what we want and we can't speak to a real person. It's very frustrating. Or if we do get through to a person, it's a call center, 6,000 kilometers away or 9,000 kilometers away. Companies talk about time to clear, and they try and reduce it. That means the length of time they're talking to their customers. I'm sorry, that's insane. You want to talk to your customers as much as possible, not as little as possible. So there's a lot of work to do here, not just music on hold or sound on hold, but the whole design of these systems. And we can help with that because many brands only exist in sound. I was just in the dark in there talking about the way that human voices are heard by blind people. Well, many brands think about credit cards, banks. You only ever interface with them on the telephone. They only exist in sound, and yet they're very, very bad at that delivery. Soundscapes is our particular speciality at the sound agency. Most soundscapes are accidental, incongruent with the brand, and they're even hostile. And that's the kind of soundscape I was talking about earlier. I'll just give you a quick example. This is grocery store stuff, pretty typical, trays being slapped down carelessly. We all know this one. Nobody's taking these out of service because nobody's listening. That's a chiller cabinet, recorded in a brand new Marks & Spencer in London. 90 decibels at 1 metre. Unbelievable. Stand between two of those and you feel like you're being beaten up. And this really did sound like this. A little tiny CD speaker, probably cost about €3, delivering crap music in a low-life store in Oxford Street. And everybody looks so miserable, I can't tell you. Intrusive street noise, terrible acoustics. It's a litany of disaster. No wonder retailers are losing so many sales. In fact, Ruth was telling me not long ago about a study she did where they found that 4 out of 5 customers were turning around on the doorstep and leaving before they even got into the store. Now, the store staff don't even know that's happening. Again, we can help with that. And it doesn't help to say you're good at sound and to play cool and funky music on top of this. That's just icing on mud. That may look like a cake, but it's not. And I'm sorry, Starbucks, you may think you're really good at music, but playing it on top of that noise does not work. So get the acoustics right in your stores first. Very quickly, run through a couple of case studies. This is the one Adrian gave earlier. So for those of you who didn't see his talk, I think everybody saw his talk, by alternating French and German music, they changed 5 bottles of French wine to 1 bottle of German wine on the French music days into 2 bottles of German wine to 1 bottle of French wine on the German music days. That is an incredible turnaround, and it's just about the cheesy music that they were playing at the time. And there's another pretty well-known wine store case study which shows the power of music in shops. And that is a wine shop in a restaurant where they were playing classical and pop music on alternating days, all randomized, adjusted. And the result was, when they played classical music, people spent more money. They didn't buy more bottles, they just said, let's have a good bottle tonight, because there was classical music playing. I'll just share with you 3 case studies from our own work. Glasgow Airport, our brief was to create less stress. So we made a generative soundscape that played in the common parts of the airport. So this is a little bit of it. It was played at very ambient level, about where you're hearing it now. Most people weren't even aware that it was playing. It's got a little bit of birdsong in it. It's got some very slow-moving, relaxing music. And the objective was to reduce stress. Actually, what happened was sales in the shops went up by between 3 and 10%. Simply because people were moving more slowly, they were feeling more relaxed, so they went shopping instead of rushing through. That's a pretty powerful result. There's another case study I can give you of an office where we installed some very, very innovative sound, probably the most innovative project we've ever done. It involved a lot of advanced technology I haven't got time to go into now, but it was a very advanced meeting space in London, and by designing a whole soundscape as part of the design of this whole office, we created an office that felt fantastic to meet in. And the feedback from everybody who goes there is they can meet for longer, they have more productive meetings, they enjoy themselves more, they love it, they go back there all the time. Marks and Spencer, sometimes it's about removing sound. Their Cafe Revive was designed by an agency who clearly have no ears at all, and every surface was hard. So the sound in that place was dreadful. I'll play you the before and after as I just tell you what we did. This is before. We installed a load of acoustic treatments. This is after we installed a load of acoustic treatments. It's a bit better, isn't it? Same occupancy, same cafe. We just put in lots of sound absorbing material to soak up that dreadful sound. And the customers stopped complaining and became much, much happier. So it's not about putting music into a space, it's about taking bad sound out of a space. And finally, from us, BP, they found that most people were saying the experience of BP service stations was really bad because the bathrooms were dirty. So they put in this project of what they call 5-star bathrooms. They look gorgeous, they're clean, and they have the sound of birdsong in them. We've got a little generative birdsong box in each of these bathrooms playing birdsong. The customers love it, and the ratings have gone from 6 out of 10 to 9 out of 10, and 71% of the people are rating them better than the competitors and saying it's because of the bathroom, and many of them are mentioning actually the birdsong as they come out. They come out smiling. Now, not many times have I come out of a service station toilet smiling, but that's what's happening here. So that's Soundscapes. This is a powerful area. It's one that we're exploring very much, and we're delighted to be doing so. And finally, in that wheel of 8 is product sound. Harley Davidson tried to trademark their characteristic sound. They didn't get away with it because there are other engines that do this. But I think they really should have got away with that because that sounds like a Harley to me. Kellogg's, they've got that crunch. And they've been working very hard on trademarking that or designing the sound of that so that it's more and more consistent. That one we've already had several times today. It's not so much just about the sound of the product, it's the sound concentric circles around it, the sound of what's going on when you use it maybe, or what's going on with the friends who use it with you, or the kind of people who use it, or what situations they use it in. So we've done this kind of exercise for shampoos, for example. There's not a lot of sound in using a shampoo, but the kind of people who use it tend to have certain kinds of music on when they're using it or where they're going after they wash their hair. So, concentric circles. So that's BrandSound. And I've just taken you right round that wheel, and I hope some of that's been useful to you. I want to give you the 4 golden rules that we always give to clients for commercial sound. These are really important, and I sincerely hope that these get into the lexicon somewhere so that people don't do some of the more heinous things that I hear out there. First of all, make it congruent, so it's aligned with a brand. I'm going to talk about super additivity in a moment. If you don't have it aligned with a brand, it's undermining the brand and reduces the brand's power massively. Secondly, make it appropriate to the situation. I mean, don't beat people over the head. Personally, I really object to sound in taxis, for example, when I haven't asked for it. So that, to me, is not appropriate. It's uninvited. And if we're going to arrive uninvited, it had better be an appropriate, maybe helpful piece of sound that we're giving, which brings me on to number 3, make it valuable. In shops, we can be very helpful by helping people to navigate or to find better bargains or to find things that go with other things that make them happier. And we can help them a great deal by making the sound more valuable, by giving them valuable information. And finally, test it and test it and test it. Because you heard from Adrian this morning, there are so many influences here. It's a bit like a bowl of spaghetti. They can all point in different directions, and sometimes you have to just eat it and see what happens, and keep eating it and keep seeing what happens. Okay, so let me just come into the last part of this talk by talking about our industry's future for a moment, because, I mean, this is such a fantastic time for us to come together, consider where we've come from and where we're going. This is, I believe, a step change in our business, and it'll never be the same after today. Sensory branding is big business already. I mean, there have been a number of books come out, there's been a lot in the press about it, and I don't know about you guys, but when I talk to major brands now, most of them are aware and thinking about sensory branding. So I'm talking about all the senses here. It's a really big topic. It goes hand in hand with neuroscience. They're starting to understand the importance of engaging consumers with emotion, and they're starting to understand the importance of delivering on the brand promise they make. A brand is a great promise, but it's got to be a great experience as well in all 5 senses. It's just common sense. Lots of clients are using it. There's just a few there, some of whom we've heard about today. I reckon the brand music business right now, this is a real guesstimate, is worth about a couple of £100 million a year. I reckon audio branding will be £1 billion industry globally by 2015. I've seen this happen before with an industry. The signs are all there, and the level of activity and interest is building and building very rapidly. Let me just talk about a very important aspect of this for all of us, and that is superadditivity. You may not have come across that phrase, but it's come out of the work by a guy called Charles Spence at Oxford University, and it's all about the fact that 1 + 1 is not 2, it's more like 5. And if you add all the senses, each of these ones is a sense, of course, you get a huge number because it's multiplicative. It's almost exponential. You're not adding senses, you're multiplying them together. What Charles Spence found is that if you make sound aligned with vision, you increase impact by 1100%. If your sound is pointing in the other direction, you reduce impact by 86%. That's an order of magnitude up or down. So for those companies who are spending hundreds of millions, I mean globally it's trillions of dollars on visual branding, if their sound is undermining it, they're getting like 1/10 of the value they should. That's a frightening number. Great number for us. Let's start aligning the senses. No brand should ignore this. I think we're moving towards designed experience. And by designed experience, I mean designing an entire brand experience in all the 5 senses so that they match. And I want to share with you a short movie. This is about 3 minutes, and I think I've just got time to do it, finish and answer questions. So I'm going to go for it. This is some work we did with 2 other agencies in Colombia for a bank. And if you may not be able to read this at the back, so I'll talk you through it at the same time. That's the Sonic logo for the new brand. I'm just going to show you some before and after, which will give you an idea of what's been achieved. This was a very fusty, old-fashioned bank. The branches were, Colombia is a very old-fashioned banking market. That's what it's turned into. And the visuals are matched by every other sense. So this, as far as I know, is the world's first integrated multi-sensory banking brand, if not in any market, because it's been completely considered in all 5 senses. So they've gone from a very traditional look and feel to something that's radically different. The competition in Colombia, all of the other banks have been phoning them up and saying, "Congratulations guys, you have blown us out of the water. We are in awe." And I think this is probably, in the whole banking world, unparalleled at the moment. The music you're listening to is something we call a brand suite. It's not actually designed to be listened to like this. It's designed to be source material so that their composers locally can take bits out of this. We gave them all of the parts. They've got the score. They've got all the audio files, so they can take bits out of this and create podcasts or any other audio, TV commercials or anything else they want to out of it. When the staff had this launch, they had people in tears, literally, of joy, which is kind of unique in my experience. And but the ringtone has been so successful that people have all put it onto their telephones. The Sonic logo has been so successful it's on everybody's phones as a ringtone. So that's the old logo, Banco di Credito. Very old-fashioned, very fusty. You can see where the helm came from. They were called Helm Financial Services, and they had this picture of a wheel. We didn't do the visuals, obviously. That was Ogilvy down there. And they came up with this much more modern logo, and everything has flowed from the rebranding exercise, from the brand essence We wrote BrandSound guidelines for them. All of the audio is derived out of that. This is the soundscape that you hear if you go into the lounges for their top customers in the branches. So it's a very gentle, it's similar to the BAA one because the brief is very, very similar. It's to relax, slow people down, give a high quality background. This is played very, very ambient level. It's like wallpaper, not designed to be listened to. It's just designed to have a non-conscious effect on people. So it's a very soothing soundscape, extraordinarily slow-paced. There's another one, which is quite similar because they have a different class of customer who don't have bank accounts and just pay their mobile phone bill at the branch or get their salary at the branch. And those people need to move through a bit faster. So this one has an implied tempo of 100 beats per minute, which you would hear if it went on for a little bit longer. You can hear the pulse there. It's designed to be compatible with the first, and yet the tempo is faster than the human heartbeat, so it gently speeds people up. This is a brand beacon they've put in. It's a representation of a tree, and we have a hypersonic loudspeaker above it, projecting the sound of the rainforest. So if you go up to that, it sounds like the sound is coming off the leaves of the tree. Again, it's sitting on top of the background soundscape, very restful and relaxing, but quite an interesting sonic feature. And as I said, this is multi-sensory, so the branches have got a fragrance which is dispensed in the branches. It's ginger, lemongrass, orange, zest and lava. So it's throughout the branch. You get this smell experience as well, consistently. All of the surfaces have been designed to be part of the brand and to express the brand and the brand values. And finally, we've got taste. So it's in all 5 senses, and the taste is expressed by sweets on the tables. There's flavoured water, and they have lollipops as well, and canapes for client events with these particular brand flavours in them. So that's the work we did with those guys. I shall move on. But I think that gives you an idea of what I'm talking about. An integrated experience is, I think, where we need to move, and it's where we as an industry can contribute a huge amount. So it's not just about the eyes. Web sound. This has been mentioned today, and currently the state of sound on the web is pretty much that. There's still very few websites which are using it. I think that's going to change. The new space, if you map content from passive to interactive, passive content doesn't move, interactive content, you can change it. From static to dynamic, static content is words and pictures, dynamic content is video and audio. And from mobile to fixed, there's no doubt that the interesting sector is that one. Sound plays a huge role there. And in fact, if I currently want to query the web, I've got to use these, and I've got to use these. That's boring. I have to stop what I'm doing and query the web and get the answer and then go back to what I was doing. In the future, I believe that's going to be much easier because I have something like this or something even smaller in my ear, and I'll just say, Fred, who won the FA Cup in 1963? And 3 seconds later, the answer will come back, Arsenal. And I was doing something all the time, much more efficient. To use voice and gesture, those are the most natural forms of communication we have. That is the way I think we will interface with the web in the future. So web sound, it'll be here. And we will play a major, major role in that. It's a huge opportunity for us. So taking all of that into account, these are just some of the people we need to be engaging with. I don't know if you can see those at the back of the room, but I'm sure we'll make this available as a movie for you afterwards. But it goes through neuromarketing agencies, bloggers, producers, media, politicians, brand teams. I mean, just huge numbers of people that we can engage with. It's already happening. I mean, this is some of the media we've had recently. You guys have had your own media. The industry as a whole, I think if we start to share this, is getting more and more and more press coverage. I'm going to finish with 2 slides. This one is possibly the most important one of all of the ones I've shown you so far. This is about silence. So I'm going to stop talking just for about 15 seconds because I don't have long. And just, it's been quite a noisy day, all in all. Oh. So let's just enjoy 15 seconds of me not talking. quite a long time, 15 seconds of silence. To me, that's like washing my face with a cold towel. I mean, it kind of resets me a bit. This is a sound we need to acknowledge. Silence is a very important sound. It's not the absence of sound, it's a sound. There are different qualities of silence, and there are many occasions on which silence is the right sound for us to be advising our clients to use. We're not in the business of veneering the whole world with sound, and least of all music, please. Music is often inappropriate. Very often it's wonderful and it's powerful, but in the right place at the right time. Silence needs to be a very important tool in our arsenal, in our armory. The Elizabethans described language as decorated silence. So I think our industry needs to be aiming at that. Let's decorate the silence. And finally, I just want to say a word about ecology, because you know the music industry is kind of falling apart, and they want to sell their stuff, and they see the advertising agencies out there and they're selling like mad to them, and all of the licensing people, PRS and so forth, are selling like mad. They do all want to veneer the world with music because they make money that way. It's a new market and they're running out of the old one. We need to, I think, be a voice of sense and discretion in this. We are the experts, and we need to take an ecological view. So when we retire, the question I think we need to ask ourselves is, did we make the world sound better? This isn't about selling more stuff. I mean, if we come up with a brilliant silver bullet sound that makes people go mad and spend lots of money in supermarkets, I'd rather not have everywhere sounding like that. Personally, I don't know about you. I think brands have got characters. I think those characters need to be explored and developed in different ways. I think we're experts. We've got great skills, and we are able to create a world that is beautiful, that's good for customers to be in, that sells more stuff for the brands, and that creates a great industry for us in the next 5 years. And I just want to thank you very much for your attention today. Thank you.